Ladies, gentlemen, and tarnished of all ages, how do you feel about Crucible Knights? Yeah, they're pretty badass, right? Well, a while back we made a build around the concept of being a complete Crucible Knight yourself. The full armor, both weapons, all the incantations, and it was pretty great. A very nice all-rounder kind of build, if not particularly busted in any one particular area. Well, today, thanks to some changes made in the patch, we are going to change that up a bit, dig fully into one specific Crucible weapon, and make it just as strong as it can physically get, while also using some spare Crucible Knight type ideals to round it out. The subject of today then is Ordovis Greatsword. This is a great weapon on its own, it does good damage, it looks great too, but the Ash of War itself is actually quite potent. It can do upwards of 5,000 damage on the right enemy with one button press if you are built for it, but the main reason that we are focusing on it so hard today are both related to poise. Firstly, it does absolutely nasty poise damage to your enemies. You can make them get down on one knee ready to be stabbed through the heart super quickly by just using this Ash of War and nothing else. You can even do it to Dragon Lord Placiduous X. The other poise related reason is your own, by which I mean while you are charging up this Ash of War, the vast majority of attacks in the game can't knock you out of it. Melania only has 1 or 2 attacks that will interrupt you, even a giant rusty anchor won't knock you out of it unless it does a strong attack. It's just particularly difficult to break. It always has had good poise before, but this was increased even further in the recent patch 1.07, and that is as good an excuse as any to really push this to its limits as far as I'm concerned. As far as PvP goes, it's sort of hit and miss, quite literally. If you want to get the full charged version of this skill off, it will be nearly impossible just due to the massive windup, but if you do hit with it, it will do absolutely nasty damage. That said, you can also use this Ash of War without charging it much, still do decent damage and have it release way faster while still gaining all the bonus poise that you do on launch. By doing this, mixing it up with regular weapon attacks and maybe even a Crucible incantation here or there, you can actually do pretty well in PvP with this, though its main strength is without a doubt PvE content, both zone clearing and killing lesser enemies while also absolutely turning most bosses to dust, at least the ones that aren't immune to holy damage, of course.
You can't hurt me.
That said, the damage of it is actually split between physical and holy, so it isn't totally useless against holy immune enemies, it's just notably reduced effectiveness. So now that you know the star of the show, Ordovis Greatsword, what do we have all coming together to make it just as strong as it is? Well, the main thing to do this are attributes and talismans. This weapon is boosted mostly by strength scaling, but also somewhat by faith scaling, so we have quite a lot of both. This is why the talismans are the way they are as well, which we are using the 2-finger heirloom, which you just wouldn't often see in most builds, just to get 5 more faith for that slight bump in damage to the Ash of War. To get this talisman for yourself, head to the Purified Ruins in the southeast side of the Liurnia region and find the stairs leading down to a chest. As well, we are using the Shard of Alexander talisman, an obvious choice for a build based around a weapon skill and its damage, as it boosts the damage of skills by 15% at no cost. To get this one, you have to do a bit of a lengthy questline, only 3 steps, but they'll take you all over the map. The first step is in the desert where you fight Radon, go talk to Alexander there, and then he will move to the lava field to the west of the Seethwater Terminus site of Grace on Mount Gelmir. Finally, meet up with Alexander one last time near the Dragon Temple Lift in crumbling Farum Azula, and you'll have this talisman for yourself. On top of this, we are of course also using the Godfrey Icon Talisman, which boosts the damage of charged skills and spells by a further 15%. This one is pretty easy to get, as you just have to defeat the boss in an Everjail, specifically the Golden Lineage Everjail southeast of the lift to the Altus Plateau. Then finally, for talismans, we are using the Sacred Scorpion Charm Talisman, which boosts all holy damage by 12% at the cost of making you a little bit squishier to physical damage. To get this one, simply defeat the NPC invader that spawns outside the Smoldering Church in Caelid, and of course, if you do PvP with this build, I heavily recommend swapping off of this talisman, as it just isn't really worth it in that context, and instead using something like the Dragoncrest Greatshield Talisman for a massive increase in physical damage reduction. After that, we also have the tiers used in the Wondrous Flask of Physic, the first of which is the Holy Shrouding Crack tier for an extra 20% increase to all holy damage dealt for 3 minutes after drinking your flask, which can be found by killing the boss located at the Minor Air Tree in northeastern Liurnia up in the hills. For your other tier, I recommend using the Faith Knot Crystal tier, which boosts your faith stat by another 5, translating to another slight damage bump to the Ash of War when you use it with this active. To get this tier, simply go find it at this location just north of the Demi-Human Forest Ruins on the Weeping Peninsula. Then we of course have the classic buff incantation incantations to make you just about any build stronger. First up is Golden Vow, boosting your overall damage by 15% and your damage reductions by 10% for 90 seconds. And then of course Flame Grant Me Strength, which boosts fire and physical damage by 20% for 30 seconds. And as I mentioned earlier, this Ash of War is partially physical damage, so this does affect it. As for how to get these, Golden Vow is located in the Corpse Tent Shack over on the eastern side of Mount Gelmir, and Flame Grant Me Strength is found on the back side of Fort Gale in the western side of Caelid, nestled between a couple of mobile flamethrower faces. On top of this, I mentioned earlier that I recommend using the Crucible incantations as well, just because we can, and it fits the themes of the build in general. These are the Aspect of the Crucible Tail, Aspect of the Crucible Horns, and Aspect of the Crucible Breath. Breath is far less important, honestly, and it requires killing an NPC that could have some relevance eventually, so we won't worry about that one a whole lot. But Tail comes from killing the Crucible Knight that you can find at the Stormhill Everjail in Limgrave, just past the start of the game location, and then the Horns incantation is a bit harder to get to, also from killing a Crucible Knight, but this one patrolling the lower west side of Stormvale Castle. You can get here from the Rampart Tower site of Grace by moving out towards the birds, and then jumping off of the overhang on the left, carefully parkouring your way down, and then once at the bottom, just go forwards and you'll find the knight waiting.
He's just standing there, menacingly!
With that, there is also another way to boost the incantation specifically, which is by wearing the Crucible Knight armor set, with each piece boosting the damage done by Crucible incantations by 5%. While this isn't necessary to make the sword stronger, it does fit the theme of the sword, and the armor is pretty good in general, good defense and resistances with pretty good poise, so given the stats I'll show you later, I recommend using 3 pieces of the Crucible armor with your head slot left up to fashion, with the small amount of remaining equip load that you'll have left. As for how to get a set of this armor, you can do so in the same place that you'll get Ordovis Greatsword itself, which is by killing the boss located at the end of the Oriza Hero's Grave dungeon just outside the city walls of Langdell. Then finally we have the seal that you'll be using to cast your buff-sing incantations in general, for which I recommend the Clawmark seal, as it specifically scales your incantation damage with your strength, which is a highly focused stat within this build. To get this, simply give some Deathroot to the Beast Clergyman located at the Bestial Sanctum in northeast Caelid. With that, you know every single piece of equipment that we use, but what about the attributes themselves then? Well, as the Ash of War is mostly scaled with strength, we will of course be going straight for 80 strength to reach that soft cap, and then after that you want a good healthy amount of vigor. 40 is playable, but 60 is much more comfortable. You want at least 27 faith base, as this lets you use the Crucible incantations, and then 25 endurance is enough to wear all of our equipment with the Crucible armor set, excluding the helmet specifically, with the rest of your points going either into Mind to let you cast an extra 1 or 2 times before needing to drink a flask, or into Faith for another damage bump to the weapon skill itself. And there you have it, everyone. A build focused pretty much entirely around the Ordovis Greatsword, with a couple of extra bits and options for if you want to change up the pace of combat, but honestly the sword skill is just so strong that you will never really need to do so, in PvE at least. It just rips through most things that you will ever fight, and you can even trade attacks with bosses and often come out ahead, which is just crazy. I hope you've enjoyed this then, another Crucible Knight based build. I quite like using this, and I hope you will too if you try it out for yourself. Let us know if you have any more ideas for fun builds to use in Elden Ring down in the comments. Like if you like the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.